everybody. Good evening, good morning, and good afternoon. It's it's Tuesday, 19th of August 2025, and as promised, Roberto Watanabe is here with us to keep going on the studies from the book The Mechanism of Mediumship. This is part number 2. If you missed part number 1, please go to FESP or Spiritist Society of Ireland YouTube channel or Kardec Radio channel, YouTube channel, not Facebook. And you can watch the previous episodes if you miss one of them. So, good evening, Alberto. How are you, my friend?
I'm fine, thank you, Esteban. Hello, everybody.
Good, good, good. So, let me do the initial prayer.
Yes, sure.
So, meanwhile, I can see some people are joining us. This is good. Always good to have people here. Good evening, Patty. Good evening, Louviam. Good evening, everybody. Good to have you all here. Okay, so let's have a deep breath. Let's calm down our hearts, clean up our mind. Let's make our connection with the superior spirits, with the mentors of this show, mentors of ESP and Spiritist and Irish Spiritist Federation. Ask them to enlighten ourselves, to enlighten our speaker today, giving him support and the intuition for today's explanations. So be it. Amen. Okay, and for you from FESP, please visit our Irish Spiritist Society website. You will see many videos from previous years, which Roberto, since I think we established this partnership like, I don't know, 3 years, 4 years ago, something like that.
Yeah, almost 5 years already.
Yeah, almost 5 years, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah, so we do have a lot of material. Uh, we are keeping this for the future. So we are trying to sow the seeds here. Okay, let me add your PowerPoint here, Roberto. Can you see it?
yes, I can.
Okay, the floor is yours, my friend.
Okay, thank you, Esteban. So, hi, everybody. Glad to be with you all again. And today we are going to see the second part of this book, The Mechanics of a Mediumship, which was dictated by a spirit called André Luiz to the most famous mediums, Brazilian mediums, who was Chico Xavier. His photo is here in this slide. Last month, we talked about the waves, mediumistic circuit between the spirit, communicating spirit, and the medium. And today we are going to proceed with the mechanics of mediumship here. And then today, Andrea Luiz is going to talk about some issues related to actually to psychology, because we are going to talk about the conditioning, reflex, hypnotism also, and all related to this subject of the mediumship, because if you think about the hypnotism or conditioning reflex, we are talking about the interaction between two entities. Right? In the case of a mediumship, a discarnate entity and the medium, who is an incarnate one. So let's start by talking about the conditioning reflex, which is this is an idea or let's say a concept that was developed in the line of psychology, which is known as behaviorism. And from that concept, André Luis, the spirit André Luis, is applying here, right, to explain the concept of mediumship. Um, like he in last presentation, we saw André Luis applying the concept of electricity, electromagnetism to mediumship. And today he's going to applying this concept of a conditioning reflex from the behaviorism and hypnotism also. Okay, so let's start by conditioning reflex. So he started by saying that about the importance of a reflection. Reflection to reflect, well, like you, for we look at the mirror, we see our image reflected on the mirror. So in the context here, it means the reflection of a thought, right? If I emit a certain kind of a thought, such thought will influence others, and we also be influenced by others who has similar thoughts as I am, as I have. Okay, so that's basically what he's saying here, that each mind vibrates within the waves of stimuli and thoughts with which it identifies itself. It means that depending on ourselves, our character, we have certain kinds of thoughts, right? And such thought that we have imposes, André Luiz says, on sympathetic minds the product of its ruminations, while receiving back, in turn, what characterizes the, let's say, the product of the rumination of those sympathetic minds, right? So meaning that whenever I think about something, that issue that I'm thinking will have impact on those who think like me, and then their thought also influenced in my thoughts, right? So there is this kind of a mental interaction. It's not something physical, right? Not something that we can see or we can hear. It's just mental, and this dynamic. André says, is independent of the spatial distance because the thought that I'm emitting now can have an impact in someone in Japan, for example, right? Or whatever, right? So, and is more effective when the process of mental exchange is conscious, when I thinking in something consciously. Right? And that's why, André says, reflection is very important in our day, every day, in every day of our life, because depending on what we think, we will influence and will be influenced by others, right? Influenced others and then be influenced by them. So in some cases, reinforcing what I'm thinking now, and then if you might thinking something good or something evil make a total difference, right? And there are some types of reflexes. Uh, and then Luis reminds us here about Ivan Pavlov, right? The Russian physiologist. He was a scientist, right? He lived in the second half of the 19th century and the first half of the 20th century. And then Derby says here that the Pavlovian school developed knowledge regarding conditioning reflex. So this was the origin of this concept here. And it involved, Derby says, the study of the congenital or unconditional reflex, such as the protective, alimentary, postural, and sexual. Congenital reflex mean reflex that we are already born with them, right? So it's not something that we learn after birth. And then we have the acquired or conditioned reflex. So these kind of reflex are acquired by us during the course of our life, right? So our lives. And the acquired or conditioned reflex, um, they develop on the pre-existing unconditional reflex or congenital reflex, right? So the base for the conditional reflex is the unconditional reflex or congenital reflex. So then we will have here the, uh, the the example of the scientific experiment that Ivan Pavlov made on his time. So what does Pavlov did? He separated some puppies, small dogs, newly born dogs, from their mother at birth and nursed them artificially. And then they naturally displayed their congenital reflexes, such as the patellar and corneal palpebral reflex. Right? The patellar is related to the let's say the exam, for example, that a doctor does with us by striking a little hammer in some point of our knees, huh? Just to see how if our nervous system is working well or not, right? And corneal palpebral is this reaction that we have, right? So whenever someone approximates something on our eyes, we blink, right, automatically. So those little dogs display them naturally, spontaneously, such a reflex, right? And then Pavlov, he introduced the puppies to meat. He took a piece of meat, which is a normal food for dogs, and just to show to the puppies and put near their nose so that they could smell, and they did not salivate, right? Because we salivate when if, for example, if someone is talking to us about a terrific meal that he just ate, then we salivate, right? Because we want to have that meal too. And by showing the meat to the dogs and to put near their nose, they did not salivate. They only salivate when the meat was put directly into their mouth, right? So meaning that meat is a normal food of a dog, but there is a congenital reflex which is related to put the meat into the mouth, just by showing or approximating to the nose does not have any effect, right? So well, the experiment here from Pavlov is to see, right, what would be the reaction of the little dogs, right? So then the point is that before putting the meat into their mouth, the puppies did not salivate, and by just only showing them the meat, right? But after he put the meat into their mouth, then after that, from that moment on, under recess, the dogs always salivated when meat was presented to their sight and or smell. So now, uh, whenever meat is showed to them or approximate from their nose, they salivate, which is something that did not happen before, right? For at the first time. So uh, here we have the concept of a conditional reflex, meaning that, and Luis says here, right, the stimuli caused a conditional reflex, as in a process of grafting onto the congenital reflex triggered by the food being put into their mouth. So the moment the scientist put the food into the mouth of the puppies, congenital reflex arose, right? Uh, and then after that, Whenever he showed the meat to the puppies, they salivated. So this is a conditioned reflex, which is based on the congenital reflex. A little bit complicated, but just to have an idea, right? And this is the concept that Andrea Luis is going to utilize here, right? Relating to mediumship. So, and then Andrea Luis says that such reflex principles, they can be applied to the psychic reflex. And then from psychic reflex, we are already in the field, let's say, of the mediumship connection, right, between the discarnate spirit and the medium. And then he said that we can appreciate the richness of the conditioned reflexes by means of which the human spirit and mental life expands. So, meaning that, for example, let's imagine a simple case of a conditional reflex. The process of learning, for example, right? We go to the school, we don't know the issue that we are going to study, then there the professor is going to teach us about that issue, then we will learn that issue, and then once we, we we learn that issue, then we don't need to have any teaching anymore, right? So this is a kind of a conditional reflex, and we'll see this later here, right? So that's why the human spirit and mental life expands, as Andrade said, right? Any action of teaching and learning, for example, involves such conditional reflex, right? And also, for example, learning to drive, learning to swim, right, to run a bicycle, all of them involve such kind of a reflex. And in this mental life, which is expanded by the conditional reflex, reason acts as a light on discernment, Anjali says, giving the spirit the privilege of a choice. So it means that by through the conditional reflex, we learn lots of things, but what we want to learn depends on us, right? So uh, is our choice, right? It's up to us, and it is in this conditional reflex of the psychic activity. Now he's talking about mental interaction, that the unconscious process of the mediumistic connection begins, right? So here approximate to the issue of mediumship. So then next he talks about induction agents. You see, he just talked about reason acting on our discernment and on and our ability to choose, right? Our free will. And then if we have the free will, we can choose what we want, what we would like to do, what the goals that we want to achieve, right? So this is he calls as self-suggestion. Right? Self-suggestion has been fully proven, he says, encouraging this or that connection or this or that habit. So if we choose a specific goal in our life, that is something that we choose by ourselves. This is a kind of a self-suggestion, but and such goals are an inductive agent because it compels us to think about the ways to reach that goal, right? So and that's what Andrea Luiz is saying here. And by doing that, he says, we are automatically connected in spirit with all the incarnate and discarnate beings that think the same way that we are thinking, right? So uh, if other people has goals, the same goals that we have, then we automatically are mentally connected to them, right? So that's why a conversation that we choose to have, a choice about a book that we decided to read, a thought about a certain subject, all these are induction agents in the sense that by deciding to read a book, a certain book, for example, we think about the issues of that book, and then that automatically we will connect mentally with all of other people who are interested in such the same subject, right? And then their results of such induction are more far-reaching, and that says, the greater our mental fixation on them is. Meaning that, for example, if I choose a goal that I want to reach in my life, uh, if I'm strongly committed to that goal, then these induction effects are much greater. Right? Uh, Otherwise, if I have I choose a certain goal, but I'm not very I don't make any effort to reach that goal, then the effect, induction effect, is much lower. Right? That's what he's saying here. And then the importance of the use of discernment, right? Because we have freedom of choice to decide what we are going to think, right? And This freedom of choices, he says, and really says, is clear and uncontestable, right, in the process of consciousness. So we must use such discernment as a rudder, he says, that the reason cannot ignore haphazardly. Meaning that, for example, that if I decided to let's say to think about something that are not good, will influence someone else, and will be influenced by such these other people too, right? So that's why he says here that if electronic currents that we saw last month of all sides surround physical life, spiritual life is also immersed in a large ocean of mental currents. So if we decide to by our free will we decide to thinking to concentrate about something, we will automatically connect ourselves to the mental currents that are similar to those that we are having, right? So within them, he says, it is crucial that we choose to seek the company of noble spirits that are capable of upholding us in the good, meaning that uh, it is better to us to, let's say, to have our free will applied correctly, right? To look forward to thinking about the good things. Then we are connecting with the noble spirit. On the opposite side, if we think about the evil things by bad things, then we are connected to uh, inferior, low evolved spirit, right? So that's what he's saying here. So let's talk a little bit about the hypnotic phenomena, which is something related to this issue of a conditioned reflex. Uh, Conditioned reflex is also involved on the hypnotism, right? And André Luis started by talking here about the ordinary hypnotism. So he says, as we examine the conditioned reflex, it's important that we spend a few moments discussing ordinary hypnotism. So, what is hypnotism? Right? The act of hypnotism. And the act of hypnotism is connected, he says, with the ability of to act upon another spirit. Right? In some way, the hypnotizer, in some way, he controls, right? He controls the will of another person, right? Another subject. So, and for that to happen, Nelly says that there must not be any sort of a close relationship between the magnetizer or hypnotizer and the subject, right? Because the hypnotic effect to occur, he says, there must be obedience and respect, right, on the part of the subject. So, meaning that if we have a close relationship with the magnetizer, then we don't have that obedience, right, and respect as we have it with a strange person, but who is recognized, right, as someone who knows what he's doing, right? So that's the condition here, he says. And how the hypnotism happens, right? So he, André Luis, started by uh, inviting us to examine the hypnotic phenomenon in a public show, right? Public shows, a hypnotizer operating in a, let's say, in public, right? So he says the operator, the hypnotizer, first asks for silence, right? And he asks also for everyone to focus on a certain object or spot, right? So he wants us to be concentrated in something, right? And this is the start of the closed circuit because by following his instructions, we are automatically connecting to him, right? So, and some of us will have a stronger connection, and then meaning that we are more easily subject to the hypnotism, right? And that's why Andrea says that those in the audience who are capable of turning in to the hypnotist induction begin to absorb his mental waves, right? So the person who is follow strictly what the hypnotizer is saying, he connected with the hypnotizer and he starts to absorb his mental waves, right? And through his mental waves, he will emit some orders to us, right? So and such a subject then become capable of shaping the thought forms that may be suggested to them by the hypnotizer, right? So shaping the thought forms meaning that if the hypnotizer says, well, think about something, then we automatically form in our mind the image of what he said us to form, right? And this form will react upon ourselves and causing the effect of hallucination impressed by the will to which they are subjected, right? The will of the hypnotizer. So you see, it's something interesting here because the hypnotizer inducing some thought to us, and then we in some way we materialize that thought in a thought form, and then we kind of see that thought form, right? That's why he says the effect of a hallucination, like that thought form was real, right? So let's just see an example here, for example. Well, then he says that the most subject will be in an ordinary hypnotic state, and some will fall into a lethargic state. In both cases, the subject will stay in induced sleep. Right? So, in the moment that we connect with the hypnotizer, we are not conscious anymore, right? Totally conscious anymore. We are in a kind of induced sleep. So that's why we can be influenced more strongly by him, right? So, and they stay in induced sleep and correlated with the motor wave of the will to which they are subject. So, what does motor wave mean, right? It means that the will of the hypnotizer. So, if he commands us to do something, we do. So that is the motor wave, right? So the mental thought of the hypnotizer make us doing something that he's asking us to do, right? And a few, Andrea Luis says, will fall of the subjects, will fall into a there in the public, right? Assisting the show, the hypnotic show, hypnotic show. A few will fall into a cataleptic or somnambulistic state, right? Somnambulistic state. So in this case, the subject mental wave react upon themselves and cause the partial or total disengagement of the perispirit. So this is a more complex situation here, right? And then, despite the perispirit being freed from the body, the physical cells, it's kept under the direct control of the hypnotist, right? So obeying his order. So meaning that in both cases, in all these cases, the subjects are under the control, right, under the mind control of the under the control of the hypnotizer's mind, right? So that's what happened here. So let's see what the hypnotizer can do in this case, right? For example, during hypnosis or lethargy, which is the first two cases, the subjects do things that cause wonder due to their humorous nature, as Ellie said. Right? So here we have an example. The hypnotist, for example, will give 10 subjects the idea of a code. Let's say that that is this strong heat as you are feeling there in Europe, right? But you are under this hypnotism influence, and then the hypnotizer says that it's very cold, right? He says that the atmosphere has become frigid. So then that idea come to us, and then we have that thought form, right, of coldness, and then we start to reacting accordingly, right? So that's why he says that all of them, of the subjects, will emit the characteristic mental waves associating the images they are capable of forming. So the hypnotizer only gave us the idea of a code, but one of us, for example, will button our coat tightly, right? So this is a kind of reaction to cold. Another one will quiver and hunch over, right? So will quiver and hunch over, like he was feeling very cold, right? And still other will shiver impatiently, right? Trembling. So the idea is one, but the reaction are dependent on each one, right? Each one of the subjects. So and then the subject is feeling all they are feeling they are um, behaving like this under, let's say, the heat that you are feeling there in Europe now today, right? So because they are under this influence of the hypnotism, right? So that's one effect of hypnotism. And then next, and then we also give another example, right? Let's see at the case of the catalepsy, which is the partial disengagement of the perispirit, right? Or the personality. So in this case, Andrelis says that the hypnotist may choose a popular figure, such as an author, a singer, or an orchestra conductor familiar to the subject. Then the 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 hypnotizer said, "Well, now you are such author, or you are such singer, or you are such orchestra conductor, right?" And then what happens? The subject, under the says, according to his or her own imagination, will take up a pen in the case of an author, begin singing, if it, in the case of a singer, or swing a thought form baton, right? So from the orchestra conductor. So they will do that following the commanding, right? The command of the hypnotizer. So this is another situation, right? Where the subject represented the role of a supposed personality, right? Suggested by the hypnotist, and that is said here. So this is some example of hypnotism, which is also related to the conditioning reflex, right? Because in some way the person is passive here and um, under the hypnotizer influence. And then we have here the case of suggestion and affinity. In deep hypnosis, the hypnotist can suggest a trivial task to be performed after awakening from the induced sleep. So, meaning that we enter into this induced sleep situation, and then the hypnotist tell us, and we are there in the induced sleep. We are not conscious, right? Then the hypnotist says, for example, well, after you awake from your induced sleep, let's say, tonight at 8 o'clock, you wherever you are, you will go take a glass of water and do to your son, for example, right? So then he the subject wake up. Then he doesn't remember anything that was said by the hypnotizer, right? But tonight at exactly 8 o'clock, uh, he will 8 p.m. he will rise and take a glass of water and bring it to his son, right? So that is what Andrea Luis explained here as this task, right? Which is performed after awakening from the induced sleep. So this is all the power, let's say, of the hypnotism. But one thing is that this order from the hypnotizer would not happen so easily if the suggestion involved the action that entail a moral aspect, right? For example, if the hypnotizer says to me to, let's say, to accomplish a act that is immoral, right? And I am a moral person, and in that case, I won't do that, right? So we only will follow his instruction if I am not a moral person, and in that case, I would follow such immoral instruction, right? So that's what Andrea Luiz is saying here. So meaning that doesn't mean that the hypnotizer has complete control upon us, right? So depend on the situation where moral aspects are involved, this situation is different, right? So, and what Andrea Luiz explained in the book is that he's talking about this hypnotic phenomena, not and it does not mean that we spiritists would make use of hypnotism in our work in the spiritist center, right? For example, and he's just talking here about hypnotism as he talked about electricity, electromagnetism last month. He talked about the conditional reflex only to explain better, right, the mechanics of a mediumship. This is the main objective, main goal that he has here, right? So then next chapter of the book, he will talk about the specific conditional reflex. So let's see what's that, right? And then he following that situation of a hypnotizer doing a show to a public, he put us in the following situation. Let's assume now, he says, that the hypnotist is a man worthy of respect, capable of gaining people's trust. Then let's imagine that a woman with a nervous disorder wants to be treated by the hypnotizer, right? And then she decided to consult the hypnotist. She saw his show, and then she thought, well, I will look for him. Maybe he can help it to resolve my nervous disorder, right? So she looks for him and resolved to abide by his treatment, right? So the hypnotist received her in a sympathetic attitude, and he says, and welcomes her with the attention, right? He takes her hand and enters the aura or halo of her energies while asking her a few questions. Well, what he's doing here is connecting, right? Is the connection that he's doing with the woman, and then with his direct touch, he injects the strong, revitalizing current into the patient while speaking with encouragement and hope, right? So he, in some way, he's already treating her, right? and uh, she's receiving such treatment by her will, right? So she wants to have this treatment. So then uh, he started the hypnosis process, right? He invites her to sit in a large chair that will help her relax more easily. He places his left hand on her head and holds two fingers of his right hand and at an elevated angle from her eyes. So then she induced the hypnosis is influenced by the will, by his will that temporarily commands her senses, right? And then he says, well, sleep peacefully, everything is fine, you will awaken free of any malady. So all of this, you see that is the hypnosis process, but at the same time is a conditional reflex process, right? So it's very similar. And then what happens? So she's there in induced sleep, right? Then while the woman is asleep, her own that is interesting here. Her own renewal mental waves acts upon the cells of her body, you know, her psychosomatic, physio-psychosomatic vehicle, so it's her body, you know, Angelis says. And then after about 15 minutes, the hypnotist wakes her up, right? And then she feels great improvement, and she thanks him, right? Wow, you helped me a lot, right? But what really happened here? What really happened here that she was induced in a way that she, by herself, by her renewing mental wave, she acted upon her body. Huh? So in some way, the hypnotizer here acted only as a means, that we says, of excitation and influence. All the job, let's say, was doing by the patient herself, right? In this case, so that's something very interesting here, right? So he's induced to do that, right? So this is the mechanics here. And then the second session of the treatment, she will go to the treatment more enthusiast, right? For enthusiast for the treatment, and then it is an offer for her, Andrea says, to merely meet the hypnotist again to enter into that conditional reflex state. Huh? Then, after some treatment, it is enough is to sufficient for the hypnotist to give some kind of object to the woman, and then by looking at that object, she will enter in that healing hypnotic state by herself, right? So after some sessions, she doesn't need to go there anymore. She just take the object that hypnotizer gave her, gaze at that object, and she will enter into that healing process by herself. So this is the specific conditional reflex, right? Which is the title of this chapter here. So that's what Andalus is going to explain here. And this constitutes, he says, a specific conditional reflex and explains the supposed curative power of certain physical relics or talisman. Right? So whenever someone gives us a talisman, for example, an object, right, say, well, this will cure you. Right? So whenever you look at this talisman, it will cure you. Right? It's not the talisman that cures us, right? So the talisman only put us in that healing hypnotic state. Then our own mental waves that cure ourselves. So that's what Andalus is demonstrating here. So all of these conditionally reflects this hypnotic process. Specific conditional reflex, all of this is related to mediumship, because when the medium go through the development of his mediumship faculty, he or she will go through a process which is very similar to what we are seeing here in these examples, right? So uh, at the beginning, the medium does not have any control, for example, on his body, on his mind. So, uh, for example, in the beginning, the a woman, for example, who is a medium, a spirit in at any time anywhere, the spirit can incorporate in her into her and communicate with us, and that's very is not correct, right? Because you we must let's say mm, we must act as mediums in the proper place and the proper time, right? At the spirit center and at the time of our the work that we have there, right? No, not on the streets at home, right? So in the beginning, the medium does not have this control. Then she goes through the mediumship development process in the spirit center, and there she will learn how to control her body, how to control her mind, so that in the future uh, she only will go into the mediumship, the specific trance of the mediumship state when she goes, let's say, every Wednesday to the Spirit Center at 7 p.m. at night, right? So at that time, she entered in such a, let's say, mediumship hypnotic state, right? In only that time. So this is kind of a specific conditional reflex that we learn by developing our mediumship. Then if we have this kind of a control, a spirit cannot incorporate into us in anywhere, right, or anytime. And also, if the spirit incorporated in us, he or it communicates through our, let's say, psychophony faculty. If you have this such a faculty, he can talk through us, but we control what he's saying. We as prepared medium, we can the spirit cannot say whatever he wants, right? He cannot shout, for example. He cannot let's say beating someone, right? So he's controlled by the medium. So the medium has gone through a mediumship development process. So such process is similar to what we are seeing here, right? Is an example of a specific conditional reflex. So that's what we have such all these issues here brought by André Luiz. So such a phenomenon, magnetic phenomenon means this influence, right? That we have on others and the other have on us, depending on what we are thinking. This happens in our everyday life. So it's not only in the spirit center or in some specific places. It happens in our everyday life, but it happens in a certain ways that we are going to see here, right? So for example, look at the, Andrea Luiz says, looking at the hypnosis at the public demonstration, the situation where the hypnotizer is making a show to a public, we see that he controls the psyche of several individuals, right? And Andrea Luiz says that on our everyday life, the same phenomenon also happens in our relationship with each other. Like I said, for example, right? If you are go to school to learn some subject, we are going to this kind of influence, right? And we spontaneously, he says, display varying degrees of automatic obedience as we surrender to the influence of others. No? Thinking about a child, for example, obeying to his father, for example, right? Is a kind of obedience, right? The child has respect for her father, for its father, right? So he will follow what the let's say the instruction that the father give him or her, right? So that's why the situation of this uh, let's say this everyday life influence starts at birth, right? So, for example, the home is the most powerful induction center, Angeli says, because during childhood, as an example I gave, the reincarnated spirit receives from its parents um, the education, right? The method of conduct that will guide its life. Then later, that child goes to the school. Right? So then the ordinary teachers of the school become guides for the students. Right? The teacher slows down its wavelengths because he knows a lot comparing to the child, right? And the student make their wavelength shorter, meaning that the student concentrate on what the teacher is saying, right? And the teacher try to explain slowly and clearly what he are going to teach, right? So this meaning slow down the wavelength of the teacher, and the student to make their wavelength shorter. And then that is the adjustment, right? Then the learning process can happen. And then after school, such a teenager, such a young, now a young person, face the responsibility of a profession, right? Then on his or her work, again, you will have this new school, right? For learning new things. So the home, school, work are all induction centers where we are influenced, why we are learning something. That's why we are all mediums, Andrea says, right? Conditioning reflex and suggestions are indispensable ingredients for education and spiritual growth. And then we can go, for example, to someone who is a Catholic to go to the church, right? Someone who is spiritist to go to the spirit center. So uh, all in all those places we are going through this conditioning reflex and suggestion. And at each step, Andali says, we are reflectors of the forces that we assimilate with the power of our will, meaning that we assimilate what we want to assimilate, right? That's very important. Our free will is very important in all this process. That's why it's crucial, and that it says, to remember the imperative to persevere in the good, right? Because if we think or talk about negative matters, then we incorporate the influence of incarnate or discarnate spirits that nourish such negative matter, right? Meaning that we reinforce such negative matters. And so that we, at the end of the day, will harm us, right? It's better to think and talk about the positive matter, right? So good matters. Then we will reinforce and be reinforced by good things. So that's basically what Andal is saying here, right? So you see that when we talk about the mediumship, we think about the medium in the spirit center, um, entering into connection to the discarnate spirit and communicate, and the spirit, discarnate spirit communicating through the medium with us. So this is what we talk about mediumship. But uh, the fact is that we all are mediums, right? We have this kind of reciprocal influence every time, everywhere, right? So that's what Andal is bringing to us here. Huh? So, and then he talks, I think in the last slide here, he talked about the degrees of obsession, right? So if we are in a state of a deliberate attention, he says, we open ourselves up to violent forces, right? So if you are very angry, for example, emotionally very angry, thinking about revenge, for example, hate, then we open ourselves to violent forces, meaning that that hate that I'm feeling that is reinforced by other people who think similarly, right? So and this may lead us to act violently in a way that we will not we would never do in a normal situation. And then after that, we will deeply regret, right, what we have done. So that happens when we are in this situation, state of deliberate tension. Uh, and then that's why Andalvi says here, right? We have become pitiable mediums of disharmony, acquiring serious debts with the wrongs we semi-consciously commit. Because when emotion control ourselves, we don't think well anymore, right? So that's why we are semi-conscious, right? And that's because, Andalvi says, as far as the law is concerned, our own will is responsible for all our problems of attunement, right? So, meaning that we could say, well, I committed that violent action because I was out of myself, right? I was under a strong the influence of a strong emotion. So I cannot be responsible for what I did, right? No, that we said, right? We at the beginning we have the free will to 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 get into that emotional state, right? So we there was a point where we could decide whether or not we should enter in that situation. Once we entered, then we lose control of ourselves, but the responsibility remains, right? So that's very important here, right? In the Spiritist book, there is a question that Kardec, Allan Kardec does to the spirit. He says, if a drunk driver uh, beats a man into death, right? Is he's responsible because he was drunk. He was not in his control. And the answer of the spirit is he's double guilty. Once because he became drunk, right? And second because by being drunk he beat the guy, right? So uh, meaning that the idea that I cannot be responsible for what I did because I was out of my mind doesn't function, right? So because you could avoid to be in that state of mind, right? So that's what Andrea Luiz is saying here, basically. So that's what we had for today. It was little bit longer today, and we went through these four chapters here, right? 12, 13, 14, and 16. Okay, Stefan.
Wonderful, my friend. Thank you very much for your help. Thank you very much for the clarifications. Pachi is always saying here, thanks so much for this very interesting special talk. So this is always good, Roberto. Thank you.
I hope it was
And
clear.
yeah, it was not easiest, but I
Mhm.
think it was less complicated than part one.
Ah, yeah, part one is more complicated. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but
Mhm.
it's good. It's good. So part three, when you gonna have the part three?
Part three. Part three, we are going to. I think it will be easier because we are going into the many kinds of manifestation. Uh, can we do on 23rd of September?
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
23rd of September.
Well, thank you, Flavio. Survives a very good and clear explanations. Thank you.
No,
So,
thank you.
guys, if you have any questions, please, this is the right time to ask questions to Roberto.
Mm.
Otherwise, we will wrap up here.
No question.
Yeah, no questions. So you were very clear, to be honest.
I hope so.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. You mind to do the final prayer for us?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, so thank you everybody uh, for following us in this presentation today. And then let's raise our thoughts to thanking all the spiritual benefactors who are always helping us in this study of spiritism. Let's also thank Jesus for this opportunity to be here reunited in his name. And last but not the least, let's thank God, the Heavenly Father, for the opportunity of this incarnation that we have, where we can study a little bit more about these issues related to our life here on earth. So be it.
Thank you. Thank you. Also, Fabiola Mello, amazing. Thank you. So, my
Uh,
friend,
thank,
that's a
thank
good
you.
reaction, saying you were doing an amazing job.
Wow, I thank you.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Thank you all who watched us today. Stay tuned. We'll be back here on the 23rd of September with
right.
part three of the Mechanism of Mediumship book.
Okay.
Okay? So, enjoy the rest of your day. Roberto, thank you.
Thank
Fesp,
you.
thank you. And I'll see you in September. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.